I am Reed. I am 27, just an average dude. IV made tons of money mistakes in my 20s, and now I want to share everything I've learned to help you take control of your finances and your life. All right, so let me tell you about this thing that hit me out of nowhere a few months ago. I was sitting there looking at my spreadsheets like I do every Sunday night because, yeah, I am that guy now. And the numbers were looking good, like really good actually. My net worth had gone up, I had been saving consistently, my investments were doing their thing, on paper everything was going according to plan. But I had this weird nagging feeling in the back of my head that I could not shake. It was this quiet voice that kept asking me, why don't you feel freer than this? Why does it still feel like there is pressure? And if you ever felt that way, let me tell you right now, you are not alone. I think a lot of us in our 20s, we chase these numbers, we grind, we save, we invest, and then we get to a certain point and we look around and go, wait, is this it? Something still feels off. And the reason is actually simpler than you think. The number you have been chasing might be the wrong number entirely. Here's the thing I figured out. Your net worth number might be lying to you, not because the math is wrong, the math is fine, but because you have been answering the wrong question the whole time. Your net worth tells you whether you are solvent, it tells you if you have more than you owe. And that is useful. I am not here to trash the number completely, but it was never designed to tell you whether you are free. And those are two completely different things. Let me break this down the way I wish someone had explained it to me when I was 22 and maxing out credit cards and wondering why my life felt like a mess. So the traditional net worth formula is simple assets minus liabilities equals net worth. You own a house worth 500 grand, you owe 400 on the mortgage. That is 100 grand in net worth. You throw in your car, your savings, your 401k, your furniture, your clothes, whatever you have, then subtract what you owe, credit cards, student loans, all that stuff, and boom, you got your number, and that is fine. But here's what nobody in the finance world wants to say out loud. That formula was built by accountants. I am not an accountant. I am just some guy who used to be broke and decided to learn how money actually works. And let me tell you, that formula answers a solvency question. It tells you whether you are going to drown tomorrow. It does not tell you whether you can actually swim somewhere with purpose. There is a massive difference between not drowning and actually swimming somewhere you want to go. And I learned this the hard way. Back when I was 22, 23, I thought net worth was everything. I would check it obsessively. I would feel good when it went up and bad when it went down. But I realized something over time. My net worth could go up and I would still feel trapped. Why? Because the composition of that number mattered way more than the number itself. And this is where most people get stuck. They think if they just get that number high enough, everything will click into place, but it does not work like that. Let me give you an example that really opened my eyes. Most people count everything they own, the house, the car, the jewelry, the collectibles, maybe a boat, whatever. And when that number hits $1 million, they feel like they have arrived. They feel like, okay, I made it. But here's the thing I started to notice as I got deeper into understanding money. If you're sitting on $1 million in net worth, but 500 grand of that is tied up in the house you live in and you still have a mortgage on it, are you really free? Number, you still have to pay that mortgage every month. You still have to insure it. You still have to maintain it. That house is not paying your bills. It is giving you a place to sleep. And that is great. I love having a roof over my head. But it is not part of what I call the money machine. This is where the idea of investable net worth comes in, and I promise you, once you understand this, you will never look at your finances the same way. Investable net worth is simple. It is the portion of your net worth that can actually generate income to pay for your lifestyle without you having to sell things at the wrong time. That is it. That is the whole game. What do you own that can actually work for you while you sleep? Because let me be real with you. Your car is not your retirement plan unless you are renting it out on Turo, which, hey, if you are, we can talk. But for most of us, that car is an expense. It loses value the second you drive it off the lot. Same with your clothes, same with your furniture. Same with that guitar you bought thinking you would learn to play it. They have value, they are not nothing, but they are not feeding your freedom. So here's how you calculate your investable net worth. You take your total assets, but instead of counting everything, you only count the ones that actually produce income or can be converted into income. Stocks, bonds, index funds, ETFs, dividend producing investments, income producing real estate retirement accounts, brokerage accounts, business equity that generates cash flow. Then you subtract out your total liabilities, everything you owe. Student loans, mortgages, credit card balances, all of it. And whatever is left, that is the size of your money machine right now. Everything else, the house you live in, the car you drive, the collectibles, the shoes, those are lifestyle assets. They have value, but they are not part of the machine. And here's where it hurts. When I first calculated my investable net worth, I was humbled, like genuinely humbled, because I had been telling myself this story about how well I was doing, and then I stripped out the lifestyle assets and the number got way smaller and it stung. But you know what? It was the most useful thing I could have done because now I knew the real number. I knew what I was actually working with, and I could start building towards something real instead of chasing a fantasy number that did not actually mean anything for my freedom. Let me make this real for you with a scenario. Imagine someone comes to you and says, hey, my net worth is $1 million. Feels good, right? You dig in. Their house is worth 600 grand. They owe 350 on the mortgage. The rest is split between their 401k, a small brokerage account, and some savings. Their total net worth is $1 million. But when you strip out the house, their investable net worth is maybe 300 to 350 grand. So their actual money machine at a 4% withdrawal rate, which is the rough guideline for sustainable retirement, generates about $12,000 to $14,000 a year. That is like $1,000 a month. That is not retirement, that is a supplement. And this person thought they had $1 million machine, but what they actually had was a machine that produces a little over $1,000 a month. See the difference? That is not criticism of that person, that is just reality. And it is the same reality a lot of us are walking around in without knowing it. I think about 2008 a lot, even though I was just a kid back then, but I have read about it and talked to people who lived through it, and what happened was wild. People had real estate. They had what looked like positive net worth, but it was debt-heavy real estate with no liquidity underneath it. And when values dropped and jobs disappeared and people could not pay their mortgages, they could not sell because the properties were worth less than what they owed. So what looked like wealth on paper turned into a crisis in real life. The people who made it through with their wealth intact were not necessarily richer on paper. They had the right structure, they had liquidity, their investable net worth was real. That is the game we are playing. Not just growing a number, building a machine that can actually sustain your life. So now you know the problem. The traditional net worth is answering the wrong question. But here's the thing. Just knowing your investable net worth is not enough because two people can have the exact same investable net worth and end up with completely different outcomes. One person lives comfortably off their portfolio. The other one is stressing out every time the market drops. So what makes the difference? I have found 3 things that determine whether your investable net worth actually works for you or just sits there looking pretty. First is liquidity. Not all investable assets are equally accessible. When life happens, and it will happen, you need to be able to get to your money without blowing up your whole strategy. This is where having a solid emergency fund comes in. I am not talking about 3 to 6 months. I push for 9 to 18 months. I know that sounds like a lot, but let me tell you why. I used to keep like 2 months of expenses saved up and I thought I was good. Then I lost a job unexpectedly and realized 2 months is nothing. It evaporates. So I started building a bigger cushion. The job of this money is not to make you rich. The job of this money is to keep you sane and keep you rich. It protects everything else you are building. When the market drops 30%, the person with a peace of mind fund just watches it happen. The person without one has to sell into the drop and turns a temporary decline into a permanent loss. Do not be that person. Second is your risk tolerance relative to your timeline. This one I cannot give you a one-size-fits-all answer because there is not one. Anyone who tells you here is the perfect formula without knowing your age or situation, and your psychology is selling you something. But here is the principle. The amount of risk you take on has to match the amount of time you have before you need the money. When you are 27, you have time on your side. You can afford to take more risk because you have decades to recover from downturns. But you also have to be honest with yourself about what you can actually handle emotionally. I have seen people build aggressive portfolios and then panic sell when the market drops 25%. I did it myself once. It cost me. You lock in losses and then you watch the market recover without you. That hurts way more than riding out the dip. So build a portfolio you can actually hold. One that lets you sleep at night because compounding only works if you stay in the game. Third is tax location. This one almost nobody talks about, and it can make a huge difference in what you actually keep. Your investable net worth is not just about what assets you have, it is about where those assets live. There are 3 buckets. Taxable accounts like brokerage accounts where you can access the money anytime, but you pay capital gains tax when you sell. Tax-deferred accounts like traditional 401ks and IRAs where you get a tax break now, but pay tax when you withdraw. And tax-free accounts like Roth IRAs and Roth 401ks where you pay tax now, but the growth is completely tax-free forever. Where your money lives determines how much of it you actually get to keep. 2 people with the same investable net worth can end up with very different spendable income depending on how their assets are positioned. So pay attention to this. It matters more than you think. All right, let me bring this home for you. Your traditional net worth is not a lie. The formula is correct, but it is answering the wrong question if what you want is real freedom. The question that matters is not, do I own more than I owe? The question is, can what I own generate enough income to pay for my life without me working until I drop? That question has a different answer, and that answer starts with your investable net worth. Strip out the house you live in, strip out the car, the collectibles, the clothes, everything that does not generate cash flow. Look at what is left. Build that number with the right liquidity underneath it, the right amount of risk for your stage of life, and positioned in the right tax buckets. That is your money machine. That is what can actually give you freedom. When I first did this calculation, I was a little deflated. My number was smaller than I thought, and that feeling sucks. I am not going to pretend it does not. But here is what I always remind myself. At least now I know, because if your investable net worth is positive at all, even if it is way smaller than you thought you have the capacity to build, you just need the right target. You need to be solving the right equation. You do not need to panic. You do not need to overhaul everything tomorrow. You just need to know the real number, understand the gap, and start building towards it with intention. It is not complicated. It is just honest. I have a buddy who did this calculation and his investable net worth was basically zero because almost everything he had was tied up in his house and his truck. He felt crushed, but 6 months later he was already making moves. He shifted his saving strategy. He started putting more into his retirement accounts. He stopped dumping money into depreciating stuff. And his investable net worth started climbing, not because he made more money, but because he started putting his money in the right places. That is the power of knowing the real number. So here's what I want you to do. Calculate your investable net worth, compare it to your total net worth. See the gap, because once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And once you cannot unsee it, you start building towards it. That is how progress happens, not by chasing a number that does not mean what you think it means, but by knowing what actually matters and going after that. If this helped you see your money differently, do me a favor and drop a comment. Let me know what your number looked like. I read every single one, and if you have not subscribed yet, do it now. This channel is for people in their 20s who are done being confused about money and want to actually build something real. Peace.